Hello everyone, welcome back to the Zekko football channel. It's taken its time, but the Radcliffe rebuild is in full swing. He is currently appointing people at the top of the club to bring them back to the heady heights that they once knew. But what about the team? What about the players that go onto the pitch week in, week out? Today, we're going to be taking a look at the squad in its entirety and deciding whether they should be staying or whether they should be shown the door. If you are new to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe, you like the video, and you turn on those notifications so you don't miss anything coming up. But now, let's get into it. It's no secret that Manchester United are nowhere near where they need to be, and that is partially down to the poor squad that they have assembled over the years. The panicking in the transfer market, the relentless attempts to try and get players, fail at it, and then go for a backup, only to realise that you need to pay a premium because of the time that you've wasted. It's just a mismatch of players that are either too old, don't have the quality, and we're going to be diving into it today. We're going to be going through every individual position and looking at every player to really question whether they deserve to still be at the club or not, and to rebuild Manchester United back to where they believe they should be. As you can see up in the top right, I have a key to indicate whether a player should stay, leave, or maybe stay, depending on what the manager thinks, whether they can get a lot of money for them, so on and so forth. Right, so let's begin. We have Manchester United here in its entirety. We're going to start with the goalkeepers. Andre Onana has come in for a lot of stick recently after signing for 50 million euros or thereabouts from Inter Milan. In that time he's played 26 games and actually conceded 36 goals in the Premier League. Now that's nowhere near good enough, but it's even worse when I tell you that he's played 6 games in the Champions League and conceded 15 goals. Now that's just horrendous. I like Onana as a person. I think he's got a lot of quality, but when it comes to actually playing for Man United, I wonder whether he has the quality. He definitely is good with the ball at his feet, but as a shot stopper, I do have my questions, and that is why I've got him on the maybe list. I think he's a good goalkeeper, and I do think that he is going to be a good asset for Man United. But if he's going to be that world-class goalkeeper like an Alisson or like an Edison, I'm not so sure, and that's why he's on the maybe list. Bayindir and Heaton are just backups to Onana, so I don't really have too much to say on them. I like Bayindir when he played for them in the reserve option, but Onana plays nearly every single game. So, again, big question marks. Let's now turn our attention to the two centre-backs. Or the two centre-back positions, I should say. Manchester United, as you can see, are set up in a 4-2-3-1 here. Erik ten Hag has opted mainly for that. Occasionally he opts for a 4-3-3, having a sole central defensive midfielder, but that's been a bit of an issue, and we'll get to that a little bit later. First of all, let's focus on the centre-backs. Now, for the left centre-back, Rafa Varane has not been the player I think a lot of people would have wanted. He came in for, I would say, quite big money. He's being paid quite a lot, and he's not really living up to that. He's missing too many games with injury, and at times he looks a little bit out of sorts. Again, past his prime. I think Manchester United have really been outdone by Real Madrid in the negotiating department because they've paid far too many or far too much for some of the players that Real Madrid have been more than willing to let go. So for me, I'd let Rafa Varane leave on a free transfer. He hasn't been given a contract, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about where he stands in the club and whether Manchester United will be willing to renegotiate. Victor Lindelof, I think, is another big question mark as well. While he's been a good servant for the club, I do wonder what he can really offer. The high line that Erik ten Hag seemingly wants to play doesn't necessarily suit him, and while I do think he's been a good servant for the club, it remains to be seen whether he would want to remain as a starter or whether he'll be happy on the bench. At the moment he's a decent defender, but I'm not sure he's first team material at the moment. Cambola is only a youngster, only just coming in, so I have no issue with him staying at the club at the minute. Let's move over to the other centre-back role. Lisandro Martinez is one of the best additions that Manchester United have made, in my opinion. Yes, he's quite short for a centre-back, but his aggressiveness, his tenaciousness is nothing short of sensational, and he's really started to bring some kind of an aggressive mentality to this United back line, and he's been sorely missed while he's been absent. Harry Maguire is again, another big question mark. He's recently come into a vein of form, and I think he's been given too much stick. I think he's been had a go at far too much. That being said, is he suited to this Manchester United side? I think the answer, he would say, and other players would say, no. I don't think he quite fits. And I don't think he fits Erik Ten Hag's style. That's why Ten Hag tried to have him sold in the summer, but nobody matched Manchester United's valuation of the player. So if there was a decent offer to come in, I think Man United would take it, and I'd agree with that option. Johnny Evans is 36 years of age, and I think he's been pretty good for United, actually. He's a good passer of the ball, and he reads the game very well. But at 36 years of age, you just saw then, I just don't see him as a long-term solution for United going forwards. It was a bit of a masterstroke to bring him in, because without him, United would have been in real trouble, and you could argue still are. Now, moving forwards, let's have a look at the fullback roles. First of all, out at right back. Diogo Dalot, I think, is really starting to come into his own as a good, decent player. I think he's got some bit about him. He's able to move into midfield, which is a quality that I didn't necessarily see from him. I'd like to see it a little bit more. I think he's good and comfortable on the ball, but he's not necessarily been given the security to be able to move into midfield as many times as I'd like to see it. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is another question mark. I'm wondering whether he would want to be starting or whether he would want to be playing as a bench player. I think he'd want to maintain his form in a more starting role, and if Diogo Dalot is going to be coming into the side at the age of 26, I can see Wan-Bissaka wanting to look elsewhere, and I wouldn't really blame him for that. Out on this left-hand side, Luke Shaw is a great player, and I think he's one of the best defenders that United have at their disposal. My problem? He's injured far too many times. This season alone, he's been out 16 times with injury, and that's just far too much. He's essentially out until the end of the season now with another injury, and it makes you wonder how many times Manchester United can really go while not relying on their first choice left back. Tyrell Malacia has been out as well, and I do have some favourable thoughts about him. I think he's a good player, but he's very raw, as are some of the other players in this Manchester United side. He needs to be given time, he needs to be given an opportunity to really showcase his skills and time to just really embed himself into this role. His unfortunate injury has meant that he hasn't been able to do that of late, but I think there is a player in him, and that's why I'd keep him around just for now. Over onto the centre midfield roles, and as you can see, for me, this is the major problem position for Manchester United. I don't think they should be taking nearly any of their centre midfielders forward, and I'll explain why. Casemiro is 32 years old, and I'm just going to go out and say it, his legs have gone. He cannot move quickly. He couldn't move quickly at the best of times when he was in his prime form, and he definitely can't move very quickly now, and the pace of the game is just going past him. He's being very isolated in the way that Erik Ten Hag wants his side to play, and that's not Casemiro's fault. What is Casemiro's fault, though, is his rash tackles, his lack of a composure element, his lack of a pacing of a game. I don't see him as the metronome to be able to allow this Manchester United side to go forwards, and so in that case, he's not really doing anything for them. Yes, he's a decent player who's able to drop in when he needs be, but his passing isn't good enough, his passing forwards isn't good enough, and he's not really making enough tackles to warrant him being in the side. And on the wages he's on, which is a ridiculous amount, the length of contract he's on, I'd get rid of him when the time is right, and the time is right now. Whether you can get any kind of money for him, I'm not so sure. He might need to leave on a free or just have a transfer to somewhere else. But at the moment, I don't see him being in this Manchester United midfield. Christian Eriksen is a sad one for me because I do like him as a player. But for the same reason as Casemiro, I think his legs have gone. I don't think he has the real dynamism or the mobility to be a central midfielder for Manchester United. And this might sound very harsh and very cutthroat, but I think this is what Man United need. They need their squad gutting. The entirety of the squad needs to be looked at, and that means looking at the players that, although you might like, or quality wise, but real momentum and movement wise, they're not there. And for me, Christian Eriksen isn't. If he's happy to sit on the bench and then come on as a quality player towards the last stages of games, that's fine, but as a main starter, I'm not so sure. Amrabat was a £9 million loan player coming from Fiorentina, and for me, he's really disappointed. I don't think he has the mobility like Casemiro or Eriksen, but at the same time I also don't think he has the passing ability of either of those players. And for that reason, I think he's a definite definite out. I think he needs to leave. I don't think Manchester United should re-sign him. I don't think they should be playing him. Perhaps that's why they aren't playing him, because there is some kind of clause in the negotiation to say that they have to pay him or have to buy him if he plays a certain amount of matches. I'm not so sure about Amrabat. I thought he would be a good signing for them, but I think I've been proven wrong. Kobbie Mainoo has all of the qualities that I've mentioned the others don't. He's very mobile, he's very good on the ball, he is a brilliant press-resistant player, and I think he's a real gem, and Manchester United should be doing everything they possibly can to make sure he stays. Moving forward, let's have a look at the central attacking midfield roles. As you can see, I'm quite happy with the centre midfield roles, or the attacking midfield roles. Bruno Fernandes is one of the most creative players in the Premier League, and I don't really need to say too much more about him. His attitude and his temperament might annoy some fans, but for me, I think his quality shines through time after time again. He's been disappointing this season, but he's been in a United side with lacking forwards, to say the very least, and he's making the most out of the situations that he's been given. Mason Mount has been injured for quite a while, and so I don't really have too much to say about him. I think he's got some quality in him, and there's definitely a player there. We saw that at Chelsea, and I think given some time, given some opportunity to adapt to Erik ten Hag's system, I can see both of these players working out very well. Scott McTominay is an interesting one, because Scott McTominay is actually Manchester United's top scorer. He's the joint top scorer with 7 goals. And that is an issue. That's an issue for the way that Manchester United go forwards, and it's an issue for Manchester United's forward line. For Scott McTominay, it's a very good thing. It possibly might mean that he's been playing out of position for the last 7 or so years. But would Man United be a better side without him in the team? And I might have to argue yes. I think Erik ten Hag wants to transition into a more possession-based transitional side. That means pressing forwards, making sure that you win the ball high up the pitch, but at the same time, when you don't, retain the ball. And does McTominay fit into either of those? And I'm not sure he does. As unfortunate as it sounds, I think the offer for from West Ham to Manchester United, while it might not have met their valuation, the move was a good one. And I think that McTominay moving to a team like West Ham might be where he should be going. I can see him being a very David Moyes-like player, and I think he's got a load of quality. I just don't think it's necessarily the quality that Manchester United might need going forwards. However, like a Christian Eriksen or like a Victor Lindelof, as a second-ranked player to play off the bench, to come off the bench, I think he's absolutely fine. As a main starter, I'm not so sure. And then we turn our attention to this. Whatever this is. Manchester United's forward line is possibly some of the most erratic, some of the poorest forward lines that I've ever seen in the Premier League from a top 6 side. Anthony. £80 million Anthony. Now, the price isn't his fault, but the quality that he's showing is. And he has not adapted to the Premier League whatsoever. He's failing to really control the ball, let alone have any kind of goal contribution or assist contribution. He doesn't really offer anything, and it's kind of baffling. He doesn't really have a right foot. He's not pacey enough to be able to beat a man. He can't really go past a person with any kind of skill or any kind of daring attempt. So I'm really questioning what he's doing as a footballer. Now, that's not to say he can't play football, but I just don't think the level is suited to him at all. Erik ten Hag seems to have a big support for him, and that's good. But I wonder if this is Erik ten Hag's make or break. If Anthony doesn't work out, what does that say about the manager? And we'll talk about him a little bit later, but I've just got to say that I think Man United need to cut their losses. 80 million is a lot, and I understand that you're not going to get anywhere near that much for him. But he wasn't worth that in the first place, and they only panicked because of the poor leadership above the manager and beyond. So for me, I'd let Anthony go. I don't think they're getting anything out of him, and he hasn't shown any sparks to think that he might get better. I hope I'm proven wrong for Manchester United's sake, but I don't think I will be. Amad Diallo is a player that's actually being kept in the reserves because of the players like Anthony who are playing ahead of him. I really liked Diallo when he played for Sunderland, and I think he needs to be given a lot more game time. Give him a chance to prove that he can't do it, like Anthony has done. So for me, I think there's a big mismatch there, and I think Anthony should go and Diallo should be in his place. Left wing, Marcus Rashford. We need to be talking about Marcus Rashford because last season he was a sensation. 35 games played and he scored 17 goals in the Premier League. Now let's have a look at this year, and he's played 25 matches, but how many goals has he got? only 5, and that's a massive, massive disappointment. The game against Fulham was a big red flag for me. I didn't like the attitude, I didn't like the lack of pressing, I didn't like the way he failed to really show himself for any kind of attempt. And for that reason, I'm wondering whether Marcus Rashford is better moving on. He doesn't look like a happy player, he doesn't look like he's enjoying his football. And as a player who thrives off of pace, technical ability, and the ability to really finish from a number of scenarios, I'm just not seeing that anymore. It looks like he's unhappy with the way that he's playing, and I can't really blame him. So for that reason, it might be better for him to be moved on if Manchester United get a better offer. I've been hearing talks of PSG wanting him. Is that a better fit? Should he move leagues? I think he is wanting to do the best for Manchester United, but at the moment he's really looking like a player that's made up of some sour grapes, and that's never going to be a good thing when you're trying to improve a squad. Marcus Rashford might need to leave. Alejandro Garnacho is a very, very raw player and only 19 years of age, but he's a player that's showing almost everything that Marcus Rashford is not. A willingness to go forward, a willingness to work for the team, a willingness to try different things, and when they don't come off, willingness to go back and try to recover possession. The sheer attempt and the dynamism that Garnacho offers is just so much more than Rashford, and I just think that it's a no-brainer to keep him in the squad when he has so much promise to offer. Marcus Rashford is 26 years old, and that is scary when you think that there's a 7-year age difference between the two, and Garnacho looks like the more experienced player at the minute, which is quite a bad thing. Jadon Sancho is never going to be in a team where Erik ten Hag is there for whatever reason. He's not going to apologise, and I can't see Ten Hag keeping him in the squad. So for that reason, I think he's got to be sold. Unfortunately, because I think he's a quality player, he's doing okay at Dortmund, but he needs to be gone. Whether Manchester United are going to be able to get anything near the £75 million that they paid for him originally, I'm not so sure. But what I am sure of is he's not going to be in a side with Erik ten Hag. So I think he's got to go in that case. Looking at the striking position, Rasmus Højlund has started to find some goals, and that's really, really good for him. However, Anthony Martial is a player that had needed to be sold by Manchester United about 4 years ago, and they have failed to do so on a regular basis, to the point where I think he's just going to leave on a free transfer. He barely plays matches, and I think he's missed 12 matches this season already. It's just nowhere near good enough. Martial needs to be sold. I don't see his hold-up play doing anything. He doesn't pass the ball very well. He doesn't control the ball very well. He barely gets a shot on target, and when he gets a goal every now and again, he thinks he's top of the world. I don't have a real issue against Martial personally, but as a player, he's not doing anything for Manchester United, and I think he needs to be moved on. These players that I've highlighted are some of the main issues with this United squad, and removing them and gutting them I think is the only way to get them forwards and get them high flying up the table once more. But we also need to be talking about the manager, about Erik ten Hag himself. Is the philosophy that he's implementing at this club good enough? What is the philosophy? These are the questions that the board need to be asking, and whether Erik ten Hag is the person to be taking them forwards entirely as it is. I think Erik ten Hag has the ability to really drive a team forwards. We've seen how good he can be with his Ajax squad, but as he said previously, the profile of player just doesn't match the way that he wanted to play at Ajax. So, in that case, you change the profile of player. He's trying to make the best of what he's currently got, but in my mind, gutting the squad and then rebuilding it is his image is the only way that you're going to be able to get a full blueprint picture of a side that is able to go forwards with a proper style of play. You can't play a high line with the likes of Varane, with the likes of Lindelof. You can't play high intensity football with the likes of Casemiro and Eriksen. You can't play possession based football with the likes of Antony or Rashford, who loses the ball continuously. It needs a change. It needs a complete rebuild, and it needs new players to be coming in and a whole heap of them to be leaving. And that is going to be the difficult point. But my question to you guys is, what do you think Manchester United should do going forwards for 2024 and beyond? How would you change the squad, and who do you think deserves to stay? And more importantly, who do you think deserves to leave? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.